it seems that a lot of people don't know how bad they feel in the day-to-day life until they jump on something like this and they realize how good they feel afterwards.
Exactly. I feel fine. I'm like, okay, well, eliminate carbs and just see how you feel. Like, you'll probably feel 10 times better. You just never have. You don't know how good it feels.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that was me for years. Like, no, I feel great, but it's like I kind of done this as like, oh, okay, no, I felt like rubbish.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 116 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. This is your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym. Today, we have a carnivore, a brother in Christ, and a fitness trainer, Mr. James MacDonald. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Cole. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's just cut right to the meat, bro. What does a day in the life look like for you in terms of what you eat?
Yeah, so at the moment, I can kind of preface that by saying that I am quite ambitiously trying to build muscle, trying to gain size. So I'm not doing the kind of typical, 1-2 meals a day that you see some people do on carnivore. So typically it's 3 meals a day at the moment. Get up about 6:30, maybe 7, eat about, maybe 8 a.m. After that, I have, lunch again about 2 and then dinner about 7. So typically a 12-hour fast every day. But I call it a fast, but it's really just a, I suppose a typical eating pattern.
Yeah, but you still get into that fasted state. I'm kind of the same way, about 2 meals a day. A lot of carnivores kind of land on that number.
Yeah, it seems to work out pretty well. Actually, I do that as well for certain, hormonal support reasons. But when it comes to the food, I tend to have quite a lot of red meat. I come from Britain, so I know my background. We tend to have a lot of dairy and fish, so I stick that in my diet as well. Just kind of the ancestral, you might call epigenetics. I tend to feel a lot better with that in my diet. When I say fish, it's like mostly fatty fish, so it'd be sardines or mackerel most of the time. Dairy.
Have you ever had? Sorry to interrupt. Have you ever had black cod?
Black cod? No, I've been ambitious to try it because I have quite a fascination with Japan, and I know that they have it out there. So maybe one day. Have you heard it?
Yeah. It's also called sablefish. That's a favorite of mine whenever I try to go keto because it has twice as many grams per fat as it does protein. So
really. Wow.
Yeah. And so if being in ketosis is important, it's a delicious way to go about it.
Impressive. But just to touch again on dairy. So I tend to almost always go for raw dairy. So raw cheeses. It's hard to get raw milk here in the UK. I'm at the moment really trying to procure some. I bought a freezer, so I want to buy it in bulk and just kind of, freeze it and defrost it throughout the year. But yeah, apart from that, I do have pork as well. So a few times a week. Typically it'll be pork belly or shoulder, something a bit more like collagenous. And then red meat, typically twice a day. So I can give an example for today. My favorite post-workout meal, which is lamb hearts. Some people might not be too keen on that idea, but I do have them as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. And you eat more intuitively, if I remember from our phone call last week, right, where we were just kind of starting to get to know each other. But you have quite a bit of variety of meats in your diet. Compared to someone that's like on a strict goal with like, okay, these are my calories, these are my macros, blah 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 blah, because that's more my style. So you're eating more intuitively. Like, does that tell you how much food to consume, what food to consume? What does that look like?
So actually, I mean, for quite a few years now, I've tended to be quite heavy on tracking, and I still do that. I know there's a lot of kind of technical dispute about whether so-called calories are worth counting or not. I see them as a useful tool. I get that physiologically they're not like a perfect quantification of energy input, or there's not even an accurate way to fully say how much energy you're burning in a day. But I find that it's just a way to quantify exactly how much you're having each day, and where I'm trying to build quite ambitiously, like I said. I'm not trying to overdo that and kind of dirty bulk, so to speak. You can do that on any kind of diet. You can eat too much, can't you? Yeah.
Then it just
So
takes
yeah, I
twice as
still
long to
track.
cut, and you lose all that extra muscle anyway, even if you did gain any extra muscle from the dirty.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and that's kind of like that's the yo-yo diet, isn't it? That some people fall into.
Yeah.
So I still track on weeks that I'm not training so heavy, so like a deload week or just a rest week. Then it will be a lot more intuitive, and I'll go mostly by hunger signals, but tend to drop the calories a bit. Or drop the energy a bit, just basically based on volume and how hungry I am. I find that when I'm not training, my appetite does go down. When I'm training, it's kind of roaring. So that's probably the best way to kind of think about eating intuitively. Just listen to your body and pair it with your activity levels. I mean, I'm not sure if you have anything to say on that point. Do you ever eat intuitively, or is it always tracked?
So for me, everything, I'm very, very, very OCD. So everything is, always tracked to a T. But I'm trying to experiment more with intuitive eating and knowing when it's okay to go 500 calories over, when it's okay to go 500 calories less. The problem is I already kind of have everything weighed out and know exactly what I'm going to eat throughout the day. And so eating intuitively, basically, if I eat more of the same thing and that satisfies me, then that's usually a good bet. But if I am hungry for something else, then that could mean that I'm bored and I'm not as in tune with my satiety signals as I believe that you really can be on the carnivore diet or on any kind of elimination diet.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm basically a lab rat right now. I'm like, okay, let's see what this does to my physique. Let's see what that does to my physique. And no competitions anytime in the near future. And so plenty of time to experiment, while I'm still in relatively good conditions.
Yeah, that's good. So you kind of got time to hash it out, and like what you said about being a little bit of a lab rat. It kind of, I think most of the time most people are, when you do take your diet seriously, you're always kind of adjusting, aren't you? No one's diet and activity levels are always the same, or even hunger signals. Even things like stress can affect it. So
100%.
yeah. So learning things about how your body feels and what signals you're getting, and then maybe assessing why you're feeling that way. It is a process, and it can actually be quite rewarding when you do take it quite seriously. And it doesn't always need to be OCD. I think some people who come into the fitness industry, especially, I noticed this when I worked in a gym, they might get put off by tracking. They might think that it has to be done and it has to be, kind of a bit OCD, as you said. A lot of people don't like that. They find it a bit tedious or even monotonous. I'm a bit like you, to be honest. For the past maybe 4 years, I've tracked very diligently. Coming to a carnivore diet is actually taken that away from me a bit, because it's so much more intuitive. You're not having to track 3 macronutrients for the first thing, and then you can kind of see
exactly that. It simplifies your spreadsheet or however it is.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, let's just
it's so much easier to
I don't exist anymore. Great. Now what do we have to work with?
Yeah. And on that point as well, it's just so much easier to kind of think it out in your head when you realize, okay, if I'm aiming for ratios rather than so-called calories, you could be like, I want a 1-to-1 of fat to protein. That's what most people start on. Tend to do well with that. That's what I do at the moment. Or maybe I do a little bit more protein.
Okay,
but yeah.
So that's kind of around keto macros. That should land you around like 60 to 70% of your macros coming from fat. So
yeah.
So do you test for ketosis? Like, are you in ketosis most days?
I don't test, so I can't answer that. I can say that when I made the transition into keto in several phases in the past, I did notice kind of what I call a keto flu. And I had it a little bit going into carnivore, but not as such. So my transition was maybe a bit steady compared to some people. You see some who might jump into this in kind of one day, do it overnight, cut everything out and be like, okay, I'm all meat now. I don't think that's the best way to do it, first of all. But yeah, I took about 3 months in ketosis and just gradually reduced the plant intake. And I think, I feel like I'm in ketosis, you can kind of get a different sense of clarity. Generally, energy levels are more stable. Things like cardio and that seem to be naturally easier.
It's a breeze.
When I say cardio, I mean endurance. So you're not kind of depending on carbs all the time. hunger signals actually change a bit as well on keto, I think. But yeah, I did have the keto flu symptoms, and since I kind of got in check with my electrolyte balance and adjusted kind of how much I'm salting foods, having the right amount of hydration over the past, the first few weeks, sorry. I can't really say that I've had experiences where I feel like I'm not in ketosis or like I'm high on carbs or something like that, because I don't really eat them. So I would presume that maybe, once a week or so I do a 16-hour, so-called fast. I would presume I am in ketosis at certain times of the day anyway, overnight especially.
Yeah, absolutely. The energy levels being stable throughout the day is my favorite part about being on keto. So that's why personally, right now I'm in a bit of I'm kind of midway between the two, almost like a hybrid. Because on one end you can have 60% or 60-70% of your calories coming from protein. On the other end of the spectrum, which is how kind of most people approach the carnivore diet with the leaner cuts, right? And then there's the higher fat end of the spectrum, and then so I'm kind of midway right now, trying to see if I can get the best of both worlds. And so far, it's been working pretty well. So I'm at about 60% of my calories coming from fat and 40% coming from protein. That's about 3,300 calories, and it's mostly chicken thighs and like some avocados. I'm just trying to try to keep everything as simple and as easy as possible. I know avocados aren't a meat source, but they're good. They got a great source of potassium. At the end of the day, who cares if we get kicked off the carnivore team, right? We're just trying to do what works for us.
I think you'll be all right, especially when you do look at, I'm not sure if you have, but I'm sure you would have done some research into, obviously, the evolutionary history of humans. We would have had periods where we would have just been meat, just animal foods, but for the most part, I think it's fair to say we're classified as hypercarnivores, where like maybe 70+% of our energy intake comes from animal foods. Having some avocado here is totally fine. I still cook with herbs. I still
it's a fruit too, so it's super low
or something.
Yeah, it's a fruit too, so technically speaking, so that's why it's like the best of both worlds, because it's great for keto and it doesn't have the anti-nutrients that there's vegetables and everything.
That's interesting to touch on as well. I think some people don't do too much research into the actual maybe metabolic effects of fructose, and they kind of go too high on the fruit when they start carnivore, or they kind of fall into like a Saladino kind of what would you say, like a little niche in the carnivore community. I'm not saying that's worse than like a standard American diet, as they might say, or anything on processed food, but I think there are reasons to be concerned about that. And avocado being a fruit, it's not one high in sugar, is it? It's a lot of fiber and mostly fat, really.
Exactly. It just, not to be graphic, but this is a bodybuilding show, so it's got enough fat to give you some grease and enough fiber to help out. So like if you're one of those people on the carnivore diet where you're like, whoa, this kind of threw off my bowel movements, maybe try adding in a couple of those, because and they're easy to prep. They're good. Fast, is quick, it's practical.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that I said about earlier. Is like, for a lot of people, you don't want to just do this overnight, and it's best to kind of make the transition in as well. So some people who are kind of, if they have thrown off their gut, just introduce some foods a little bit. That's definitely a good point.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest things that you noticed when you started cutting out vegetables and eliminating your diet and simplifying it to exclusively meat?
The biggest thing, probably threefold. So the first one was that my gut health improved dramatically. So just to kind of say, I'm 21 at the moment, and basically most of my life I've had some sort of gut distress or something. Most of it probably caused by stress in the past, if I'm completely honest. I could be open about that, but cutting out a lot of the plants definitely improved that. And even on carnivore, I still had some healing to do, and I still do. I can admit that, but it's dramatically better. The other thing is I actually experienced quite severe oxalate dumping. I'm not sure if you've heard about that.
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah, so before I started to cut it out, I had what you might even call an oxalate overdose. I was very heavily into my salads, and I ate a lot of spinach basically, and cocoa, and didn't realize exactly what I was doing until I started to have all these kind of dreadful symptoms.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't go into the details in this episode, but it's not nice. And if you can kind of avoid oxalate in your diets, please do. I'll say that to anyone listening. But if you do have any symptoms from them, which you probably know, you can look it up. You want to make a gradual transition. I'd done mine a little bit too fast, and I suffered for it. But sometimes I can be a little bit all or nothing. And yeah, maybe that was a little bit of a mistake. So
I'm an all or nothing guy too. Another thing a lot of carnivores are. I mean, you kind of have to have that mentality, have a screw loose or two to go, you know what? I'm just gonna eat nothing but meat. Like, this sounds like a great idea. And then you start to realize these common sense things, like, you know what? Okay. All of our ancestors had to survive at some point, and so whether you believe how we were created or evolved or whatever, we can all agree that we've adapted at some point. And at the end of the day, our ancestors that were able to survive famines, that's where we come from. The people that weren't able to survive famines, they're not around anymore. So I mean, just to make it as simple as possible, meat readily available, vegetables readily available. Meat makes you feel good, has the calories, and has everything that you need to fuel yourself as a human being. And vegetables are extremely low in calories, and so evolutionarily speaking, it makes no sense to eliminate the meat from your diet, in my opinion.
No, not at all. And there were a lot of interesting points as well about even, like you mentioned, vegetables. It's worth maybe touching on the topic that the vegetables we have now and the fruits we have now are nothing like anything we would find in the wild in the past. They are quite literally created. They've been bred, via either genetic manipulation or just over years on farms. Yeah. And when you think back to, any time before the agricultural revolution about 13,000 years ago, we had 3.5 million years of becoming human without those kind of vegetables and, a high kind of grain diet or anything. So I like, you've probably seen Bart K's content, and he points out, very well that in the past it might have been like tubers or seasonal fruit, but oftentimes they're very fibrous, and lower in the sugars and starches that we even see nowadays. And when you look back at traditional societies and how they process these kind of plant foods, almost always they were peeled or, crushed and fermented, or, sprouted if it was some sort of seed, or soaked, or, something or other. Whereas nowadays we tend to eat a lot more raw plants, and we don't process them properly, especially when it comes to things that do have a lot of anti-nutrients. So yeah, even on that point, the ones that were seasonally available in the past weren't like today. So just to kind of kind of loop it back around in a short, simple way, meat has, I think, and when you look back at the data and listen to archaeologists and anthropologists and evolutionary biologists, it seems to be the kind of, big pillar of our diet, and then, kind of little bits on top.
Yeah. You seem to be particularly knowledgeable about the source of your meats, and that's something that I wish that I was better at personally. I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest. Most of the food that we eat, I got 2 businesses, kids, but it's not really at the forefront of my mind to be doing the grocery shopping and to know exactly where our meat's coming from. But Taylor is totally on top of it. She knows, my wife knows exactly where to get free range chicken, grass fed beef, everything coming from quality sources. But yeah, I was just wondering if you had any tips or thoughts and more that you wanted to share on how to know for sure if you're getting quality pork, quality beef, quality whatever it is that you're eating.
Honestly, it's the same as you. So I do a lot of supermarket shopping for my meat. But But when I have an opportunity to go to a farm shop, or I am actually seeking out independent suppliers at the moment. I do get high quality ones, or in the supermarkets, you'd often see things now that are labeled grass-fed and grass-finished, especially in America, I believe. In the UK, we don't so often see grass-finished. It's not quite caught on here yet. But the best thing you can do in general is actually to research the animal welfare and agricultural standards in your country or your region, wherever you're from. And then you at least have a starting point to say, okay, are these animals that are in the supermarket, are they of high quality or not? And then you can kind of start from there. In the UK, we're quite fortunate to have what is considered one of the best farming standards in the world. And, I do believe it's not perfect, but it's definitely better than other places. So our dairy, our cows and our sheep and lamb, for example, have a very grass predominant diet anyway, and they're generally just finished with grains or supplemented. It's not the same as some other places, but the most important thing, just look into the animal welfare standards in your country or region, and also look at what they're fed. You want it to be as close to as natural as possible, and ideally as low in grains as possible. But I think that's really digging into the nuances. For most people, just eat animal based. It's that simple, worry about that stuff after you've kind of transitioned.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're splitting hairs when you get to the point of where your meat is sourced from. But if you want everything going for you, and if you want, and if you really want this diet to work the absolute best you can, I certainly believe that's an important factor. But at the end of the day, Sean Baker said it great in his book. He goes, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, when it comes to grass-fed versus grain-fed, at the end of the day, you're eating a steak, and steak is just good for you. It's a superfood. Carnitine, carnosine, zinc. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of nutrients that it's extremely dense. But I guess the only reason that for grass-fed over grain-fed is I try to keep my omega-6s low and try to keep the omega-3s high, and that really helps with chronic inflammation, because I definitely have a lot of it. Is that something that you pay attention to, the omega-3 and 6 ratios?
I do, yeah. I don't focus on it as much as some people, but I tend to have, like I said, a lot of fatty meat in my diet. Fatty fish. So I get omega-3s from there. I don't focus on the exact ratio. I can't tell you what my ratio is. I don't think most people could. But apart from that, I'm not too strict about it. I don't avoid like fatty meat because I'm scared of omega-6 or anything like that. I still eat pork. I think there's a big difference that should be pointed out. And that's that the way your body metabolizes and processes the omega-6s in, for example, meat and pork, and even grain-fed chicken, for example, is different to the omega-6 that you will get in seed oils. Yeah. So,
which makes sense. It's probably more bioavailable, right? If it comes from an animal source, it just kind of makes, again, here, it just makes common sense to think that your body would more easily recognize that as being similar to your body fat than something like more foreign, like a plant.
Yeah, well, part of it actually comes simply down to the processing, to be honest. Basically, if you have enough of the right nutrients and minerals in your diet, and enough omega-3 in the first place, you can do fairly well, it seems, with even a slightly higher omega-6 to 3 ratio than we might have had in the past. What happens when you have seed oils is, as I'm sure you're aware, they are processed in very nasty ways, very high heat ways, and they're stored for long times.
It's even sugar, man. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a lot. Yeah, so you get the trans fats, aldehydes, all these kind of distorted fatty acid molecules, which basically, to quote Dr. Kate Shanahan in her book Deep Nutrition, they cause free radical cascades in your body, and it's just inflammation galore, basically. The animal fats you're going to get from cooking some pork belly and the omega-6 in that, first of all, it's not going to be as concentrated. Second of all, you're getting a bunch of nutrition to support its metabolism anyway. it's not actually the same profile of omega-6 fatty acids. So obviously when you say omega-6 fat, it's not just one type of fatty acid, it is a selection. So for example, you have like, to kind of list from different categories of fat, you have saturated fat, so you might have conjugated linoleic acid, or you have monounsaturated fats, like, and there's there's linoleic acid and there's oleic acid. Basically the list goes on in each category. That's what I'm trying to point out. And yeah, in animal foods, it's not the same. You're not getting these kind of toxic overdoses of chemicals.
Yeah, I think this is a good topic to spend a little more time on too. Is inflammation, and how this diet that's for me personally, is, especially if I'm using keto macros, that even helps the inflammation even more, because the high protein carnivore approach, it's not really keto and it's not really high carb, but it feels like it's high carb because of the muscle glycogen that you achieve from gluconeogenesis, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what both of them have in common is that there's no carbs. And so for me, that's definitely helped to keep the inflammation down, with the exception of Christmas, because I mean, bro, you gotta look at my mom's peanut butter chocolate cheesecake that she makes, and it's the highlight of the year. You just can't say no to it. If you were there, I don't care how on your diet you are, you would want to have a bite too. But man, after Christmas, like, I just felt, yeah, it was too many cookies, too many days in a row, and it took a week to start feeling normal again, like just to not have joint pain. I don't know if you can relate to that.
No, I definitely can. And it kind of brings up a point where it seems that a lot of people don't know how bad they feel in the day-to-day life until they jump on something like this and they realize how good they feel afterwards.
Exactly. And, they're like I feel fine. I'm like, okay, well, eliminate carbs and just see how you feel. Like, you'll probably feel 10 times better. You just never have. You don't know how good it feels.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that was me for years. Like, no, I feel great, but it's like, I kind of done this as like, oh, okay, no, I felt like rubbish.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skullbellz TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. Our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes. Your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skullbellz TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too, so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
I mean, it's funny to say as well, you know, there's nothing wrong with making an exception here and there. Like, we would have done that all throughout evolution anyway. I can say over Christmas I had some carbs as well. I still stick to whole foods. I'm not going to say I ate anything processed because I didn't. But you know, it was like some nice kind of vegetables, some sprouts. I know they're high fiber, but carrots and what do you call them, parsnips as well. A little bit of potato. So it's all fine, to be honest. And there's something to be said where maybe it's healthy once in a while to kind of kick yourself into that state where you feed yourself with some carbs. It seems that we've done it seasonally, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's best to do it seasonally, but you know, doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whenever I incorporate carbs personally, I'm a big fan of sweet potatoes, but I'm also glad you brought up parsnips, because those are so underrated. And if there is a carb source that's better than sweet potatoes for bodybuilding, it's probably parsnips, because it keeps your insulin low. It's got an even lower GI than most sweet potatoes do, and they're also very high in potassium. So those have been a particular favorite of mine for quite some time too. That reminds me, man, I should do that on my next carb cycle. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Electrolytes. We were touching on that a little bit earlier. Is that something that you track and that you pay a lot of careful attention to?
No. In the past, when I said, I was having those oxalate dumps, I paid a lot more attention because that really throws your electrolytes off. I even took magnesium and potassium supplements. You got to be careful doing that. Very careful with potassium. But basically,
what would be the problem of consuming too much potassium? I'm just curious.
Death.
Really?
Yeah, it can stop your heart.
Okay.
That's actually what they do when they euthanize people. They inject them with potassium, basically. Obviously,
how much potassium would that take?
Anyway,
I've never heard of overdosing on potassium before. That's a new concept.
That's because most people don't buy it concentrated and take it. But I did that. But obviously, I controlled it very, very carefully what I was doing.
Gotcha.
But no, I don't track it. No, I just go by how I feel. If I'm a bit tired, to be honest, I drink some more water, depending on if I feel dehydrated or not. Or I just have some more salt in my diet, and oftentimes a little bit of both, because as you know, salt helps to retain water. So
yeah, I'm glad we're talking about salt, because you know that I'm the salt guy. So what's your favorite salt, bro? What do you salt your steaks?
Actually, mine's a little bit unique. Have you heard of black salt, black Himalayan rock salt?
Black Himalayan rock salt? No, that's a new one on me, but that sounds
not too common. So it actually sounds like where it's from, I suppose the Himalayas, but it's actually used in Ayurveda, which is ancient Indian or traditional their medical system, and basically it's quite high sulfur, a little bit higher in potassium and slightly lower in sodium than other salts. It just basically has a little bit of an eggy taste, to be honest.
Wow.
But it's quite nice. And I really like to have that, especially with, like a nice steak. But apart from that, it'll be any sort of real salt. I tend to avoid having too much sea salt.
Sorry to cut you off. That salt that you were just describing, that's from an ancient seabed, right? Not from a fresh seabed. So it has probably like a bit sharper of a taste than sea salt, is what I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, it's quite sharp, but it's a rock salt, so it's not from any seabed. So it would come from rock mines, really.
So maybe like from a cave then. Gotcha. That makes sense. Because I supplement with Celtic sea salt, pink potassium cave salt, and that's
awesome.
Yeah. So that's sourced from Spain, and it's from an ancient sea. It's from an ancient riverbed underground, obviously, which is why it's in a cave. And I don't know why, but I just find it interesting that that's where your salt is sourced from too, and both of them are particularly high in potassium. Because this one's about a 1-to-1 potassium ratio, which is why I'd supplement it, which is why I put it on everything. It tastes good too.
I mean, I'm not like a chemist, but I wonder if it's something to do with them perhaps coming from near the earth, maybe something in like minerals in the rocks or like soil, for example. I don't know if that affects it, or yeah, it's interesting. But
there's a correlation.
That's nice.
That's my next project now. Figure that out. Why does salt from caves have more potassium in it? I can't sleep until I find out the answer to that.
You have to send me the answer. I'll share it.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, so when it comes to sea salt, I don't tend to have as much, just because I know that it can have like microplastics in it. So if I do, I tend to go for like something like Celtic or maybe Cornish sea salt here in the UK. Something that I think might be high quality. I don't look into it too much.
Sorry to cut you off. Did you know that we're sponsored by Celtic sea salt?
I didn't know.
Oh, that is hilarious. Okay, hell yeah, this is a great opportunity. Excuse me for 1 second. No, this is a commercial break. If you are listening to our show, you gotta check out my favorite salt. Have you heard of this one, bro? The Mac I Pure that Celtic does.
I haven't heard of that one though.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, this is a really good one. Yeah, it's sourced directly from Hawaii, and it's unrefined, and it's not grinded down, so it's basically like a kosher cut. Actually, yeah, it is kosher certified. It says it right there. But the flavor for me is it's definitely my favorite. But you can't go wrong. But you can't go wrong with this guy here, which is what I'm guessing that you probably use is the fine ground gray, right? The one that comes in the blue bag.
No, I mean I actually tend to get everything I can in crystals and grind it when it comes to my salts. So I don't really buy the ground salts.
Okay. Well, good stuff, man. Are you much of a seasoning guy, or do you pretty much stick to just meat and salt? Because that's kind of a popular trend. That's kind of the bandwagon that I'm on right now.
Yeah, somewhere in between, really. So in the past, I've been a massive fan of different types of spices and seasonings.
So
I'm
you're
a big fan of cooking,
you're big
really.
into
Different world cuisines. My mom is, I'd say she's an excellent cook. I went through phases of being obsessed with like buying cookbooks from Italy and things like that. And I like seasoning. Yeah, I don't go overboard with it though. I tend to just stick to herbs nowadays and maybe some spices here and there, but mostly salt, to be honest.
right. What kind of herbs are we talking?
It all depends on the recipe. Anything. I have quite a lot of rosemary, to be honest. I think that's like superb with beef.
With
Rosemary.
beef? Really? I always thought it was more of a pork.
Yeah. Really? That's different. I don't really see anything like that here in the UK anyway.
We
tend to have
sage.
Maybe sage with beef. With pork and
that's
more aromatic herbs. So something like an oregano or maybe parsley. Something a little bit mild there, but no, it's not something I tend to have with pork. Rosemary, I think I have with beef and lamb mostly, so red meats. It might be different for you. But apart from that, I can say one recipe. I'll recommend it to all your listeners and you, if you ever get to have any sort of lamb heart or chicken heart, like heart meat in general. Like have some dried fenugreek and garlic powder and salt it as much as you want. But just cook them up together, like fry them in a pan. It's just like amazing.
Nice. Yeah, no, my mouth is watering. I'm glad I'm eating lunch right after this, man. We're spending a lot of time talking about a lot of food. This is first meal for me every day is bone broth with organs in it. So that's kind of the rule. And then dinner is whatever's left in the fridge that my wife was feeding the kids, and then I just make sure I hit my macros after that. It's just a matter of using chicken and avocado. Bam, and just make sure we hit 3,300 calories and stick to those ratios. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Do you make your own bone broth?
We do actually. Yeah. The rule is any bones that we have, we save them. And so that could be, because we're at the end of the day, we're eating a lot of animals. And I grew up in Montana. I got no on a cattle ranch. And so that's just kind of, meat has always been a big part of my life. But at the end of the day, like you got to go ethically. There's a lot of animals that aren't alive anymore because I'm eating them. Right. And so I find it to be, I feel like it's good stewardship, knowing that, okay, this is a gift from God. How can I use every single bit of it? Right. Matthew 20b says, I have, excuse me. When I'm put on the spot, sometimes I have a hard time remembering it, but
I have, I do the same.
Yeah, I have you, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Behold, I have made 5 talents more. Right. So if his gift of creation is his gift to us, then our gift back to him is our stewardship and what we do with it. I feel like using every single piece of the animal is maybe it's just because I grew up around a bunch of Native Americans, and that's something I always admired about them and their culture. But every single part of the animal, whether it's bones, organs, we just try to incorporate it all. So yeah, bone is a regular thing, and it's done miracles for my skin. It's filling. It's just loaded with nutrients, and it's versatile. You can put all kinds of stuff in it. It's good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying there. It is really just a matter of respect, if nothing else. You can kind of look at it spiritually if you want, and I do personally, similar to you. But I think if you're gonna eat anything like an animal, I mean, I'm not saying that's unethical in any way. That's just what our species does. But make most of it. But apart from that, it's interesting because years ago when I first started on like a whole foods kind of diet, what I considered more of an ancestral or traditional diet, not quite carnivore ancestral, but maybe a few thousand years or so, mostly whole foods and some modern vegetables, but I tended to ferment foods and everything. And bone broth was like a game changer for me as well, especially when it comes to recovery in the gym and joint health.
Yeah.
Big game changer. So yeah, I do the same thing, keep the bones, cook them up. And if I don't do that, if sometimes I buy bones, to be honest, from my butcher, or I just have like some collagen powder, just as a backup.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, it's nice to have a pantry that has like a couple extra, bottles of store-bought bone broth in case you run out. That's kind of our protocol.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, organ meats, is that something that was hard for you to get into, or was it something that okay, did you like grow up eating organ meats or something?
No.
That's one of the biggest complaints we get across the board is like, am I going to have to eat liver? Am I going to have to eat that? And I'm like, no, you can do the carnivore diet and not eat any organs. You'll be just fine. You'll still be getting 99.9% of the benefits. But yeah. I like that you seem to eat quite a few of them. So yeah, what are some of your favorites?
Yeah. And just to touch on it, you don't need to buy organ pills either. Don't waste your money.
Just they're good.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't difficult for me. I like I said, I started a few years back on like what I consider an ancestral kind of whole foods diet. I'll be transparent. I'll say I mentioned Dr. Kate Shanahan earlier. I'm a big fan of her. She kind of the first book I ever read on health and nutrition seriously was Deep Nutrition. I recommend anyone who wants to explore just kind of different areas of your health and nutrition and understand why things like sugar and seed oils especially are bad for you, read that book. But yeah, it opened my eyes to what
read any health book with a reputable author, and probably at some point they talk about how bad seed oils are.
100%. Yeah. But yeah, no, there's kind of big emphasis in that book on the power of organ meat. So I'm not squeamish, like what we said earlier. It's respectful to the animal. Don't let it go to waste. I don't see there's any need to. We've eaten it for thousands, millions of years even. Probably not as much as some people do nowadays. Well, definitely not as much as some people do nowadays. I like what Dr. Baker says, where you have to consider what percentage of the animal is actually an organ. Like how often are you going to be eating of it, and how much of that are you going to be eating? Likely it's going to be very rare. It'll be intermittent and you won't have like loads of it, but it's a nice boost in nutrition. But yeah, when it comes to me eating organ meats, obviously you got to be careful. You don't want to have too much liver. I've done that in the past. Basically you can overdose on vitamin A. That's the main concern, or copper, and you kind of throw zinc off that way. You don't want to do that. If you're gonna have liver, maybe have it once a week and don't go above like a couple of 100 grams. I'd say that's like max for most people.
I've heard the same thing too, which is for me why it's always small amounts.
Yeah, exactly right. But apart from that, I just have kidneys, to be honest, and heart. They're my main organs, especially heart. Heart is just high in coenzyme Q10. It's not extremely nutrient dense. It's more of a muscle meat, to be honest. It doesn't store like fat soluble vitamins in very high amounts that could be, overdosing. And I think the worst thing you'll do by having kidneys, if you were to really, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And
that's right.
I was just going to ask before I forgot how you prepare your heart when you do eat it. But if you wanted to continue on with the with where you're going with the kidneys, yeah.
Yeah, I'll touch on both. So I'll come back to the heart. So with the kidneys. The only thing is, I think if you're like eating that as your sole source of meat, which I don't think anyone's ever done, you might have too much.
Never crossed my mind.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might have a bit too much copper and maybe too much protein as well, because they're very lean. So every time I cook them with a lot of fat, by the way. Apart from that, they're very high in vitamin B12, but you're not really going to overdose on that unless you're like not having any other B vitamins in your diet, which
No, you just pee out whatever you don't, whatever you open.
Yeah, but you can throw ratios off if you're not having the right balance.
Okay.
But it's not too much of a concern, to be honest. When it comes to hearts, I actually almost every single time I fry them up. I slice them and just fry them in a pan. I don't add any other cooking fat. They're quite, they've got a nice.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever everybody's like, "How do you eat heart?" I'm like, it's a big steak. That's what it is. Just cook it like a steak, and it tastes better than a steak. That's how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can see my Instagram today. Actually, I had it for dinner. It's like my favorite post-workout meal ever.
It's so bomb.
After intense workouts, like that's what I go for. So I done that today. I had quite a good session, and then just fried it up. Just over half a kilo and some eggs. So
yeah, awesome. Well, good stuff, brother. I can't tell you how much I respect your time. This conversation has been. I've learned a lot. I mean, you see, I got a whole notepad full of things that I've learned and things that I'm going to go follow up and look more into now, because that's the whole reason I want to have this conversation in the first place. Just after that phone call, I was like, wow, you know a lot about the things that I haven't really thought of, and so.
Got a lot to learn.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your wisdom and your experiences, brother. I wanted to wrap up and kind of finish things off with Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord is with you wherever you go, and do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. I don't know if that was word for word, but that's paraphrased, right?
Very close. Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of one of your favorites, from what I understand. I mean, it's on the top of your Instagram profile. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Going back through most of my life, I think I wish I had those words and remembered that more, to be honest, in some quite dark times. And when I started to get into my faith, which for me was only a few years ago, to be honest, I grew up in a family which isn't strictly religious. I mean, under the background, we would be Catholic, and it was actually only last year that I myself got I went through the RCIA. I got baptized.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but I listened to the podcast with Father Miles. Oh, I can't remember his name. I'm awful. But yeah, Bible in a Year, famous podcast, not one of the top in the world at the moment. And I remember when he said those words, obviously we're going through Joshua, and it's kind of repeated, and it just stood out to me. I listened to it when I go for walks, right? And I stopped. I was like, wow. So something, I don't know exactly what way, just hit me. I was like, yeah, that I'm staying with that. To be strong enough, good courage, especially those lines. Yeah, that's the part that's repeated, and it kind of reminds you that even when it seems like there isn't any support, or there's nothing immediately to be hopeful about, there always is when you come from a line of faith.
100%. It's a relaxing feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually on that point as well, I see, and I think a lot of people see this now as well in the world, there's a lot that's going on, especially over the past few years. I won't say what's happened, but there was some sort of pandemic. Just to say.
There was?
Yeah, I can briefly remember it. But people are more and more getting anxious about what's going on in the world, and the media isn't doing any favors by kind of espousing all these different states of crises that we're in. I think a lot of it is forced, to be honest. Maybe we'll talk about that another day, but having that there as well is just a way to tackle it and not be scared of the blowback that you get, because some people believe it and it's not their fault. And it just means that anytime you see kind of opposition or fear mongering, I kind of have those words there and I can just keep going.
Yeah, it sounds like it gave you like a sense of peace and security through 2020, huh?
Yeah, and since
2021, because that's kind of when you got saved.
Yeah, but I'm sure it would have done the same for me throughout most of my life if I had had it. So anyone who doesn't know that, write it down, stick it on your wall or something.
Do you find that the carnivore diet has helped you with your faith at all? Like you're able to, I guess personally, I feel the most spiritual kind of towards the tail end of the fast, and I feel a deep connection with my with my creator. When I'm not really ever fasted, but I'm in relatively a fasted state and have an empty stomach, and I'm probably in ketosis. And so I get a very elevated state of mind around that time typically, and find it very, I find that that's a very effective time to do prayer and meditation exercises. I'm just wondering if you can relate to that.
No, that's an awesome question. And so the longest day for me every week that I do a fast is a Sunday, and I don't eat until after I've come back from mass. And I mean, sometimes I have coffee before, if that, I don't think that's cheating. But yeah, I mean, definitely it kind of does elevate your sense of, I don't know, mental stability in a way, or focus. You're not craving food or anything. You kind of get into a deeper state of ketosis, like you said. The ketones start running in your brain. You've got that stable energy. You can focus. Generally, I feel quite uplifted, and it just makes going to mass that tiny bit. What would you say? More enlightening in a way. Just uplifting. That's the word.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Thanks for touching on that. I know it's a deep subject, and especially it's one of those things where faith is so personal. It can become hard to articulate and put into words. And then I'm always wondering, okay, am I reading, am I studying right now because this is what I'm going to teach, or am I reading and studying right now because this is for me and something that I need to hear? And so being in a fasted state helps me to, it just gives me a sense of clarity that helps me to be able to identify when's a good time to focus on what's on what I need to hear, and then what's something that this is a powerful message and something that I feel like something that I feel called to share. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, brother. God bless you. Where can people go to find out more about you and watch you on your muscle building journey, your fitness journey, and the things that are happening next in your life? I know you're going to be starting your own podcast, and so a lot of things in the work for you, my brother. Where can people follow you?
I think the main thing at the moment would be my Instagram. It's fitness with Jam, as Jam is in JAM. That's my initials. So I think that's kind of just like a brand name for me. I started it when I worked in a gym, so it's not all fitness now. A lot of it is to do with politics, to be honest. Things to do with climate as well. And that's what my podcast is going to be about, but also health and fitness and nutrition. So basically I think there's a lot out there which kind of touches back on that what I mentioned about fear mongering and people being anxious. And there's a lot of misinformation as well. And the more you study into things seriously, the more you realize that. So my goal is to just do the best I can when it comes to sharing what might be the truth, or at least might be more objective. And just kind of defending, some traditional values. I think that a lot of it's being torn down in society, and people are being really hurt by it. So my podcast is going to be speaking to people on all of those fronts, particularly health and fitness. And that's going to be called The Rethink. So, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be notified. That's coming out soon.
Yep. Great. And then we should do a round two with you again on this show and just talk all about that podcast too. Give it a few months, and then once you have your first few episodes out, man, I'm excited to listen to those, because I've already learned a ton from you just this last 45 minutes, man. It's just being able to see somebody else that is that you have so much in common with, and that has a totally different angle, and has you have all these methods that work for you. I definitely got a lot of takeaways. I'm sure everybody else did too. So just wanted to say thanks again from the bottom of my heart for your time, for being on our show. And I know we're going to be talking a lot. God brought us for a reason.
I hope so.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes for you, and to kind of be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, all of those words means a lot, and I kind of send them straight back to you. So the time's been really appreciated. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure.
Hey everybody, this is Coach Colt. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 116 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. And that commercial break that was like halfway through about the Mackay Pure Salt, that was not a joke. I'm dead serious about that. If you follow us on Instagram, that's the salt that we're pretty much eating all the time, because it's just our favorite. It's got a great flavor. It's a little pricier than your normal, like Celtic sea salt is more of the basic. Redmond real salt, that's kind of where most people start off in the low carb community. When you start getting into really making sure that every single nutrient that goes into your body is giving you the best bang for your buck. So yeah, this stuff is sourced, like I said, directly from Hawaii. It is absolutely delicious, and it is on our website, supersetyourlife.com. Last thing is a quick client testimonial. This is going to be from Linnell in Orange County, California. She just had a couple nice things to say about her first couple weeks on a diet where she's eating exclusively meat and salt, the results she's been experiencing, and how she feels so far.
Hey, it's Linnell, and I just wanted to give an update after starting my program a week ago. I just wanted to say that everything is going great. I'm looking forward to the results that are going to be coming. I'm super satisfied with the results that I've gotten so far. Working with Coach Colt and Coach Taylor have been great. They've been very responsive. Any questions that I've had or any info that I've requested or needed, they've been quick to respond and give me some ideas and tips and things like that. So that's been great. And the program that I have been following has been very easy to follow, to understand, and to actually implement it. So just wanted to say thank you. And also I'm looking forward, so excited for what's going to be happening. And if anybody is interested, I would highly, highly suggest that you guys join the Superset team, and that you guys definitely get a program of your own. It's very beneficial and it's super exciting. So anyways, I'm excited for the future and hope to provide more updates soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Linnell. That was so absolutely sweet of you. Everybody else for listening, thank you again. God bless you. Please share with a friend, someone that you think would either be benefited or just entertained by this episode. All of our growth up to this point has been organic, and so we're extremely blessed for that. We're just trying to keep it that way, and just thanks for sharing. It really, really means a lot from the bottom of our hearts. So yeah, episode 117. Give us a couple days, we'll get that one out, and we're gonna keep bringing lots of carnivores, lots of bodybuilders, and everything that you need. Anybody that you think that you might benefit from hearing from to keep your workouts entertaining, educational, and inspiring. God bless y'all. Go get a good pump.